What's up, everybody? Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile. Mike Renner, Kyle Long. Today, with the Hall of Fame game on tap, we're back. First off, we're back. We have live football, but the Hall of Fame game on tap, we thought we'd go through the entire NFL and say the players that we think are going to be Hall of Famers. Say who deserves it, who's on pace, who might be on the outside looking in the Hall of Very Good. We're going to go through that a little later, but first off the ball segment, some news. Not much news. We were just here 24 hours ago. We're back on our new schedule. Kyle, how are you adjusting to the 3 days a week here?
Let me just say, I'm in a bit of a headlock, as it were, because you get used to that off-season program. That 2 days, it felt like OTAs for a while. You enjoy seeing your buddies. It's like, God, you know what? It's Monday. Can't wait to see Mike. It's Wednesday. Can't wait to see Mike. And then they're like, you're going to see Mike again on Thursday. And I'm like, look, he's handsome and he's nice and he's knowledgeable, but I guess we're going to do some Hall of Fame game stuff. But look, I want to point out something. You were setting the bar here for this conversation we're having about players in the NFL that we will be having. This is when people say there's guys who are locks and then there's guys who are in the conversation for Hall of Fame. This is the conversation. If you always wonder where it happened, it will be shortly. But obviously, we got some stuff to cover in the news here first, Mike.
Yeah, so the bit of news that happened in the last 24 hours, Kolton Miller, left tackle for the Las Vegas Raiders. They got this deal out there, I think just because to distract everybody from the Christian Wilkins news, but it works. 3 years, $66 million for your franchise left tackle. I think that's a great number. I mean, 29 years old.
Steal.
With the way tackles are aging nowadays, that's like your prime, seemingly, if you haven't been too banged up, and Kolton Miller has not. So $22 million a year, that's right in the neighborhood of where Zach Tom just signed. That's obviously less than where Bernard Raymond just got. And, I'd probably put him behind both of those guys in the
Is that hierarchy. Dan Moore? Is that Dan Moore number?
It's just a touch above Dan Moore. Okay. Dan Moore kind of set the bar. Basically every new tackle who wanted a deal after that, it's like, well, I'm freaking better than this guy, right? So Kolton Miller gets more, but for the Las Vegas Raiders who, don't have a lot of franchise cornerstones. Seemingly all their franchise cornerstones now, whether it's Geno Smith, whether it's Kolton Miller, whether it's Max Crosby, no more Christian Wilkins, but they're all under contract. They all just got extended this offseason. So good on the Raiders and the new regime here.
Kolton Miller, one of these guys that is very, very, very good at his job. And unfortunately, there's so many great players in the National Football League. A guy like Kolton Miller will never get the respect that he's owed. I mean, you and I both just looked at the 3-year, $66 million extension he got. And I mean, it almost feels like stagecoach robbery for the Las Vegas Raiders to be able to retain and extend a guy like this at 29 years old, who is great in run and pass, and obviously going to be a focal point of your offense. Home run for the Raiders. And for a guy like Kolton Miller, who obviously is like, look, I'm getting a ton of money anyway. Just extend me. I want to be a one-team guy. It's a rarity in today's NFL. So good on him. Good on the Raiders.
Kolton Miller, maybe better known as the only number one draft pick in the John Gruden era that ended up working out. The only one. No, that's not fair. Josh Jacobs is all right too, but their history, for a refresher, Kolton Miller, Cleveland Ferrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, Henry Ruggs, Damon Arnett, Alex Leatherwood. Yeesh. Well, hopefully new regime there. It seems like they're making better decisions now. All right, the other bit of news before we get to this Hall of Fame rankings or Hall of Fame candidates, shall we say. Michael Phelps offered to teach the Ravens how to swim after they posted this video on their Instagram.
Hey, Mr. Phelps, we have a problem. Did you know that 1 in 3 Ravens cannot swim?
We have a solution for you, sir.
Come to Ravens training camp in this beautiful aquatic center and teach us how to swim.
This is great. I mean, this is just like classic training camp. Well, I mean, first off, are they talking about feathered bird Ravens can't swim, or are they talking about Baltimore Ravens that can't swim? 1 in 3 Ravens can't swim, according to Marlon Humphrey. We saw Ronnie Stanley, Kyle Hamilton on there. What a crew. And some of these guys can't swim. You were telling me before the show that you're a bit surprised by some of the guys that were on this video.
Well, I wanted to tell a story at Notre Dame. So when you go to Notre Dame, the very first week of class, they make you take a swim test. And it is like you do a full Olympic-sized pool. You do freestyle down, backstroke back. I was not ready for this. I think so. It's like 8 a.m. I was up the day before till like 4 or 5 in the morning playing Halo. Wake up, I'm on like no sleep. I do this test. I almost vomit. I can swim, but I can't swim. I've never taken swimming lessons like formally like that. I've never swam competitively. It's a real test. So these guys, to lead with Ronnie Stanley and Kyle Hamilton, I was like, these guys better have learned how to swim. They did that swim test, and if you didn't pass the test, you had to take a full semester of swimming classes. So
they must have taken four semesters a year of swimming courses for 4 years. These guys, right? Because clearly they're still in the shallow end.
But it's because there's lakes on campus, and
yes,
they had some people drown. I think it's a liability reason, but there you have it. All right, there's your news. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to get to our Hall of Fame candidates. We got a jam-packed show. I did a lot of research for this. You guys will see it just a second. Coming up next.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, before we get into the tiers, I couldn't do this without doing tiers, but the guys getting inducted tonight: Eric Allen, former DB for the Raiders; Jared Allen, not related. Former defensive end. That's pretty obvious. We've seen both. Former defensive end for the Minnesota Vikings and Kansas City Chiefs. Antonio Gates, obviously tight end for the Chargers. And then Sterling Sharp. You asked me, you texted me earlier today. You're like, what's a guy who you would bang the table for who's not in, who like has been on the ballot for a while and hadn't gotten in? I told you Sterling Sharp's my guy. Yep. Sterling Sharp, prime Sterling Sharp, those early years with Brett Favre was as good at, was like arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL for a 3 to 4 year stretch there. Had the career cut short with neck injury, but I'm of the opinion, and we'll get to this in a second, that to get in the Hall of Fame, you either need insane longevity, and we'll get to a guy a little bit later who might qualify as such that I could go to bat for in time. You either need insane longevity with high level play, or you need dominance. I just
burn bright for a while. Yeah.
I don't want to put a guy in who was just pretty good for a longer than normal career length, but not uniquely longer than normal. Like I think Andrew Whitworth deserves to be in the Hall of Fame when he gets up on the ballot because that guy played the first left tackle to play at 40 years old,
and he capped it with a Super Bowl.
Yes, and was legitimately, maybe never the best left tackle in the NFL, but was top 5 for probably a decade. Yeah. That to me is the type of longevity I'm looking for. But if you were never really in the top 3 to 5 category at your respective position, I can't in good conscience go to bat for you as a Hall of Famer unless, again, like I said, you played a crazy amount of, you had crazy longevity, crazy health, things of that nature that just are different about your game. So that being said, let's get to the tiers. The very first tier here, I called it just the not having this combo because I was given a list of guys. And these guys, I just listed 64 guys. These guys, I mean, just objectively, they're not Hall of Famers. It is Cooper Kupp, who had, second most receiving yards in a single season all time. He's not a Hall of Famer. Had just a handful of 1,000-yard seasons. Is obviously towards the end of his rope now. I don't think we're going to get too much more out of him. Not a Hall of Famer. Keenan Allen, not a Hall of Famer. Joey Bosa, not a Hall of Famer. If he would have stayed healthy his entire career, we could be having a different conversation. Unfortunately, things went awry for him. Stephon Diggs, not a Hall of Famer. Joe Flacco, not a Hall of Famer. 0 Pro Bowls. Russell Wilson, not a Hall of Famer. I know he has 10 Pro Bowls. He has a Super Bowl ring. To me, he doesn't fit that bill of what we were talking about of
top 3 to 5.
Yes. Did you ever look like that guy?
No, look, Russell was 6, 7, 8 for a decade, and then faded into the 10 to 15 here as of recent memory. He came on so hot that rookie year. I mean, to win the Super Bowl in Seattle, to be part of that defense. Obviously, a lot of eyeballs were in Seattle. You talk about Pro Bowls for Joe Flacco. It's like I compare it to big wave surfing. This whole NFL fame, NFL legend status. First off, you got to pick the right beach. You got to get drafted in the right spot. You got to be healthy enough to paddle out. You got to have your timing right to wait for the right wave. And, maybe your team wins and you happen to be healthy and you play well. That's like the perfect win. And if you can do that for a few years, you end up on a really short list of players that are like, oh, that guy's a Hall of Famer. But if you're not, and you don't have Super Bowls and you don't have the accolades, you better have been, as you put it, so dominant that you're undeniable.
Wilson, to me, he wasn't. And comparatively, I think he has a much better case than Flacco. But when you compare him to the era that he was in, he kind of made those Pro Bowls because he had the best defense in the NFL. He made those Pro Bowls. Yeah, he had good stats, but he had good stats because they were running the ball a lot, because they didn't have to pass the ball a lot, because
they won 10 years. They won 10 games a year for a decade,
because they could win games, 14-10. That was the Legion of Boom. It was the best defense of the 2010s, and he was connected to it. And that's why they won a bunch of games. But it's hard for me to go to bat for the guy like Russell Wilson, given that. And then his longevity, which is kind of, he's in his late 30s, and he's dropped off a cliff. He did not have an impressive length of his career compared. He's not gonna there's no argument that's going to revolve around how long he played, the volume stats that he put up that's going to get him in the Hall of Fame either, in my opinion. The other two guys here, Harrison Smith, Joel Bitonio, we don't even have to talk about that for too long. It's just like Harrison Smith was maybe a couple years in there, truly, a top 5 guy at his position. Yes, he's played for forever, but to me, not a Hall of Famer. All right.
Immediate Ring of Honor.
Yes, exactly.
Immediate, team of the 2010s or whatever, all decade team. But this is a big gap to bridge for Hall of Fame for a lot of these guys.
Yes, and if it's me, Notre Dame homer saying that this other domer does not belong, it's like, hey, he probably doesn't. All right, the next tier. This one, here's where it gets more interesting. These are guys who, if their career ended today, they're not Hall of Famers. If kind of their career arc continued on its path, I still don't quite think they're Hall of Famers. But I think they're all good enough and capable enough that if they have health go their way, if they play for, a little bit longer than you might expect in terms of the usefulness, that these guys we could be talking about by the end of their careers as Hall of Famers. The first one, A.J. Brown. This might be a little disrespectful to A.J. Brown's talents because, again, I think he fits that bill of a guy who's at times been a top 5 wide receiver in his career. But I think he's in the wrong era just because when you look at the rest of the receivers around the NFL, and we'll get to these guys, but he's behind Justin Jefferson right now in his career arc. He's behind Jamar Chase right now in his career arc. He's behind CeeDee Lamb. He is on the out. And, from an era, it's hard to put in that many guys at one position. We're just going to have to kind of tilt our expectations from, let's say, 2008 on, guys whose career started then at the wide receiver position, at the quarterback position, just because the numbers are so different.
It's a different game, dude.
It's a different game. So A.J. Brown, 7,026 yards through 6 years. That's not quite 1,200 yards a year average, a little over 1,100 yards a year. That's good. But all the other guys I mentioned are up in the 1,300 yard a year range. There are numerous guys who have started their career doing just that. So I think he's just a little bit on the outside looking in. But again, he is talented enough. The problem is he's not in a volume passing offense. He is not going to be anytime soon, it looks like, there in Philadelphia. So that's the one thing that's not necessarily in his favor.
AJ Next Brown, guy. Dude. If he, I understand. If he keeps it up though, if they continue, if they win another one in Philly, and there's certain teams where if you win a Super Bowl in that town, you get vaulted, you get launched, you cut the line. It's the fast pass at Disney.
Yes, if you're on, and we'll get to that conversation when we talk about some guys on the Chiefs and this run that they've had.
Yeah, we will.
When you have 3 Super Bowls, 4 Super Bowls, like one of the guys we're going to talk about, it gives you a little deference in the eyes of the committee. You get put closer to the front line, even if necessarily your down-to-down play wasn't, just because you're part of a team that's historic like that. Max Crosby's the next one here. Almost 10 sacks per season for his first 6 seasons, 59.5 through 6 years. He's about to turn 28, so you think he's got about 4 to 6 more years of doing just that. 2 second-team All-Pros, 4 Pro Bowls. Like I said, I don't think that's quite Hall of Fame pace as of right now, but I think he can get there.
I mean, numbers don't lie. And when you are the cornerstone of a franchise, I weigh that into consideration as well. He's a real leader. He's not just that guy that's in the shadows waiting to go make plays and doesn't say anything. He's a leader. He's a Raider. So what do you say, 69 sacks in 5 years?
59.5.
59.5 sacks in 6 years. Dude, I mean, the guy's going to end up with Cam Jordan numbers by the end of it. And that's a guy we'll talk about soon. But it's wild how every Sunday this guy dominates. Offensive tackles fear him. Offensive coordinators have to scheme around him. And yet we're still like, he could go on a run for the Hall of Fame. Like, that's how great the top is. And that's why it's so hard to have these conversations and have a distinction between the guys that are great and Hall of Famers.
All right, next one, Roquan Smith, Baltimore Ravens.
This is hard, dude.
This is going to be hard because from this generation, I think we had last generation, we'll get to those guys, but Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly, Levante David was kind of the old guard of the top end linebacker. Then we've transitioned to this new age where you have a guy in Fred Warner who's going to be in the next category, which is the on pace for the Hall of Fame if they continue the play they're on. And you have Roquan Smith, who I think is like the next up of this generation of linebackers. 3 first-team All-Pros, 2 second-team All-Pros. He's 28 years old. You know, like I said, I think he's of the sort of mold or of the talent level that it's going to take him getting a handful more, you know, being part of a championship defense, things of that nature. He's going to need more on his resume than just kind of where he's at right now. But he's still young, and obviously he's going to be on a team in the Baltimore Ravens for probably the next 5 to 10 years where they're always going to be in the mix. So you're going to talk about Roquan Smith. You're going to hear about Roquan Smith. So it would not surprise me if he ends up in that mold.
Stud. That's all I'll say.
All right, Saquon Barkley's next. Because as much as, you know, he is the flavor du jour, his first 6 seasons, he went over 1,000 yards in half of them. You know, he had a injury-marred start of his career. He had a poor team-marred start of his career.
This is the surfing analogy. You could be the best surfer in the world. You show up on the wrong beach, you're screwed, buddy. You're screwed. And
so it's hard for me to say he's on pace. Now, he's in an amazing situation, and of all the people on this list, I think he's the one I would bet on this tier, excuse me. He's the one I would bet on to make the Hall of Fame the most, because he's in a spot where he could go the next 3 seasons, you know, 1,600 plus yards in each of them. And I wouldn't bat an eye, given how good that offensive line is, just given how, you know, favorable the run game is going to be with Jalen Hurts as your quarterback. But I just think as of right now, like I said, how I tiered this up, if his career kind of just, you know, he's 28 years old, useful life for running back, how it's been of late, 2 to 3 more seasons, and he has, you know, only 1 or 2 1,000-yard seasons over that, which was, again, the pace he was on over the start of his career. But I think it's going to be a little different than that, I'll just say.
Got to have a little bit of luck. Got to have a little bit of luck to get in these things, man. Because, like, we're going to talk about a few of these guys, so I don't want to give anything away. But, I mean, look throughout the course of history at some of the players that have not made the Hall of Fame, and then compare the guys that were at comparable positions in a comparable era. And a lot of those guys were just on better teams, or they had better situations. It's just unfortunate. There are so many forgotten greats in the National Football League. It's a shame. It makes me sad, dude. I mean, we're talking about something that's so happy. It's like this is the top of the top, but I just get sad thinking about a guy who got rolled up, or a guy who got this or that, or, you know, Dwight Stevenson was a center, and was like the best center ever. And I got to find out. I got to find out exactly that. Well, the story was essentially like an old college teammate cut block him on a turnover or something like that. And Dad always talks about Dwight Stevenson. He's like, Kyle, I wish you could have seen this guy play. And it just makes me tear up when I think about all the greats that we never got to see play, or Eric Williams, the offensive tackle for the Dallas Cowboys. That was, if you ask any of the guys that watched him play, he was the nastiest, meanest, most athletic dude. He was like Trent Williams out there, but we don't get a guy like that in Canton.
Yeah. Dwight Stevenson, actually, PFF named their best player each year. They don't give an MVP. They didn't get the Dwight Stevenson award.
That's fantastic.
So, next guy up, Quinn Williams. This one's a little bit of a call. I debated adding him to this or not, but he's only 27. He's still very young, and I think the interesting thing about Quinn Williams is he's a guy who's been on a team where they've not had leads. If you're a defensive lineman, your brother can attest to this. It's a lot easier to put up stats, to put up numbers when you are pinning your ears back and rushing the passer. And he just has never gotten a chance to do that at any point in his career with the New York Jets. Still been a one-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler. I think he's absurdly talented and just a guy that could go on a run. I'm not calling him. I think he's probably least likely of anyone on this, but could go on a run. Chris Lindstrom's another 3-time second-team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler at the right guard for the Allen Falcons, only 28 years old. If he plays a decade after this, we could be talking about Chris Lindstrom as a future Hall of Famer. Rashawn Slater, the last one along the offensive line here, only because 4 years into his career, he basically had 2 years washed out with an ACL tear that came back. ACL tear year 2, came back, I believe, the next year and just wasn't the same. Or was it tricep?
I think he had a tricep. I don't know. We talk about so many of these injuries. I forget. Rashawn Slater. And by the way, Dwight Stevenson, Hall of Famer, but not one of these names that's etched into your mind as the greats. When I think about these greats at the center position or offensive line, I think of guys like Jackie Slater, Bruce Matthews. They had that longevity. Some of these guys don't get to experience that.
Okay, we both got it wrong. It was biceps tear. That's on me.
Okay.
But that basically came back and wasn't the same.
50% here. Okay.
And then was an All-Pro, second-team All-Pro this past year. So, he's the type of guy that if he just maintains this, I could see him doing it. And the last one, this one may be controversial, but Jalen Hurts. Because this was to the early point. If he wins 3 Super Bowls, which this Eagles team, I don't think anyone would be too surprised if they did. It's still loaded.
He's got aura. He's got aura. It's what the kids like. The Hall of Fame voters are going to get younger and younger. Look for guys with aura to get some of these votes.
So Jalen Hurts very well could. All right, the next tier. This is the fun tier. These are the guys who are off to Hall of Fame starts. I don't think anyone debates that if they just keep doing what they're doing, they will be Hall of Famers. This is the on-pace tier. At wide receiver, I have the aforementioned Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown may be a little controversial, but go look at his stats.
I love that he's on this list.
I mean, if he keeps the stats up for the next – and he's young, too. Was 20 heading into the NFL. If he keeps his stats up, he will be in the Hall of Fame conversation. Okay, at other side of the ball, Patrick Surtain on a Hall of Fame start already, on his rookie deal, getting a Defensive Player of the Year. Micah Parsons on a Hall of Fame start. Penei Sewell on a Hall of Fame start. Kyle Hamilton, Tristan Wirfs, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Dexter Lawrence, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, Creed Humphrey, and then 2 quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Josh Allen.
Trey Smith on this list, or is he?
He's not off to a Hall of Fame start.
Is he on the next tier? Well, we're talking. You said we were going to have the conversation about Super Bowls and leveraging.
He would be in the last tier if anything. Could go on a run tier.
Yeah, I mean, string together. So, and he's playing next to Creed. It's like Mike Munchak, Bruce Matthews. For any of you football historians, that was the 2 guys that were pretty good at it that played next to each other. I don't know. I just, I'm romanticizing my buddies going into the Hall of Fame together would be cool.
Yeah, anyone from this tier that you push back on, say they're not off to a Hall of Fame start to their career.
I think we're going to have to see if we want to see those guys from the Ravens, the aforementioned Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton really cement themselves into these conversations. They got to keep it up. That's why Hamilton's in the on pace, but the Ravens have to win some big games too. I think this is where it becomes a team thing. because a lot of questions are going to be asked about the superstar team in Baltimore that ever ended up winning anything. And these are real questions. And I'm not pointing my finger at Kyle Hamilton or anything like that. But look, you asked. We got to, because I don't have an argument for Josh Allen. I don't have an argument against Dexter Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Sauce Gardner. He's been an absolute Captain Insano. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Micah Parsons. If he can stay healthy, if he can just stay on the right side of the microphone, and if things can get cleaned up there, no doubt. Tristan Wirfs is just makes it look easy. Fred Warner is the prototype for what the linebacker position is supposed to look like. Look, I love the list. The guy that I'm happiest about being in this segment here, outside of Creed Humphrey, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I just think he exemplifies everything about being a football player. And, there's a reason he's on the list. So young players take note and make a list of the guys they picked ahead of you.
So Amon-Ra St. Brown, for his career now, 4 years. He's averaging over 100 yards, over 100 catches per season, 430 receptions through 4 seasons. And he's averaging over 1,200 yards per season. That's pretty insane. That's a pretty insane start to your career.
Yeah.
You may not be like, oh, that guy's not necessarily.
And he's likable. He's like, people, there's something to be said for that. Okay. So, yeah.
And he's 25. So there's.
Life's not fair. Life's not fair.
Off to a Hall of Fame start. Only 3 guys in this from the 2022 class, though. Only 3 guys who are 3 years in, but I think they've been that good. It's the 3 DBs. It's Sauce, it's Stingley, it's Kyle Hamilton. Obviously, career length, injury history, it's fickle, but I think with all 3 of those guys, you can say what we've seen in the first 3 years is truly special stuff. We're going to do the Hall of Very Good before we take a quick break. But these are the guys, this is probably going to be where the most debate happens. These are the guys that I just think are on the outside looking in. Not to say they can't do something crazy. They're towards the end of their careers. They can't do something crazy over the next few seasons to change that. But I just don't think right now with their resumes they're in. And the first 2 are probably the most controversial. They're teammates. It's Davante Adams and it's Matt Stafford. Davante Adams currently 33rd in NFL history in receiving yards, 10th in receiving touchdowns. He has 3 first-team All-Pros, 6 Pro Bowls. He's only 32, so maybe he has a few years left in the tank. Stafford, he doesn't have the accolades in terms of All-Pros, Pro Bowls, only 2 Pro Bowls in his entire career. But he is top 10 in both passing yards and passing touchdowns. He's 37 years old. He should be making his way up those lists. Those matter. Do you think either of those guys are getting in when it's all said?
I'm not even going to entertain the conversation about Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford, in my opinion, is a Hall of Famer.
Really?
Well, I think if he finishes strong this year, it's in bold print. And the Davante Adams conversation, it reminds me of a player that we were talking about earlier, Andrew Whitworth. Look, the numbers for Davante Adams don't lend themselves to him being a Hall of Famer, but you look at his body of work, his ability to stay in that upper echelon list of receivers for so long, and he has the opportunity to cap it at the end in a huge market with a quarterback who can get him the football. This feels like that story beginning. And there's a reason these 2 are together on this list, because if they do have success this year, it'll be a no-brainer, in my opinion. If they were to win a Super Bowl, it would be, they'd waltz in together.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's the thing. There is time, but these guys, I just think Hall of Very Good when it's all said and done. Matt Stafford to me is kind of the quintessential what I was talking about earlier. I was never a top 5 guy at quarterback. I feel similarly about like Eli Manning, and Eli Manning I think even reached some like higher highs in single season than Stafford did. So that's why.
That's Arch beating down the door right now. He's coming in here. He's next. He said, I'm going to get into.
The guy I want to hear your take on.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack is on this list as well. Former Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time first-team All-Pro, 2010s All-Decade, 9-time Pro Bowler, 32nd, though, all-time in sacks, 107.5. He's 34, so maybe he moves a little up that list, but do you think he ends up getting in when it's all said and done?
I'm just going to paint the picture of Khalil Mack for those of you who just look at the numbers and go by name recognition. Khalil Mack was on a very bad team and played extremely well. And he was one of those guys that burned brightest for a few years. There's a few stars in the galaxy that burned extremely bright, the brightest burning stars. He was one of them. And the thing that separates Khalil Mack from other guys at the edge position is his ability and willingness to play the run. His leadership abilities are something that you just can't teach. And when he is in your locker room, you're a better football team for it, not only on the field, but off the field. My old man played defensive end and defensive tackle and all that, and he was a sack getter, but his sacks don't put him in Hall of Fame territory either. But he played the run, and he was versatile, and he could do anything. And Khalil Mack is the same way. I think the thing that's makes him stand out, though, is his ability and willingness to play against the run.
I put these three at the top because I think they are the most interesting conversations in this tier. If you want to put them in, I'm not going to be like, no, you can't put them in. I just think ultimately this is where they end up. But I think they're all three very interesting conversations given how their careers have gone out. Now we get some guys who are less interesting conversations, but obviously for one reason or another, intriguing. Danielle Hunter, he could even be in like the could go on a run, because at 30 years old, the guy hasn't lost a step at all. He's still playing as good as he ever has.
And he's opposite Anderson.
Opposite Will Anderson, 99.5 sacks in his career. So it's going to go over 100 here this season. He's gone double-digit sacks the last 3 seasons. So like if he keeps
slow
that
starter, which means he could finish burning really bright blue. You know what I'm saying?
If he keeps that pace up for, say, 3 to 4 more years and gets to the 140-ish range of sacks, it's a much different conversation. But right now, he's 46th all-time, 5-time Pro Bowler, no All-Pros to his name. But again, a guy who could be ageless given that he's 30 years old, showing no signs of slowing down. Another guy who's shown no signs of slowing down, Cam Hayward of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not going to put up the numbers, but he's DT. So DTs, you more have to just actually watch tape and see how good they are. And for him, he's a 4-time first-team All-Pro, 1-time second-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler, and he's playing into 36 years old now. And last year, truly hadn't lost a step, was still one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. If that continues on, if he is like an Andrew Whitworth-esque end of his career where he's at 38, still dominating, we are probably putting Cam Hayward in the Hall of Fame at that point.
I mean, I don't know how a guy like Cam Hayward can remain physically for doing it for so long and the way that he's done it. I think that's a really good one to hit. Danielle Hunter, I mean, I remember when he showed up, I was in like year 2 or 3, and this guy shows up, he comes off the sideline for Minnesota. I'm like, who is that guy? You know what I mean? But he didn't know what he was doing at first. And then once he started to figure out, I'm glad I was out of the league, because now he's on this tear. Look, if the Steelers make a big run this year, it's all about runs, dude, and timing. It's like the surfing analogy, bro. Cam Hayward is, he's here for a big wave this year. They bring in all this help around him. And then obviously Aaron Rodgers is going to be in Pittsburgh. It could be awesome for Cam Hayward.
All right. The other guy who's up there in age, but definitely lost a step, we'll say, Cam Jordan of New Orleans Saints. 100. He actually is second among active players in sacks. 100.
He needs 7 sacks to catch Von Miller.
Yeah. He is a 1-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team, but an 8-time Pro Bowler, and was part of the 2010s All-Decade team. He's a very, very good player. Again, I'm not here to denigrate any of these guys. Had incredible career. He's not Cam Hayward, though, where he's not putting out any more tape that's going to work in his favor, and hasn't for a couple of years now. But longevity does still matter. I just think he's a guy who was always very good, very consistent, very reliable. One of those first ballot New Orleans Saints Hall of Famers, team Hall of Fame guys that you love as a fan. Fortunately, I just don't think. Full Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Famer.
That's a lot of
Next
sacks.
one, George Kittle.
That's a lot of sacks.
George Kittle. This one, I don't know. His candidacy, I debated for a while because he's 13th already in receiving yards. He's had so many injuries, and has undeniably been a top 2 tight end for
a decade,
half a decade at least. And so from that perspective, he kind of fits that bill, but only 2 first-team All-Pros, 3 second-team All-Pros, 6 Pro Bowls. I think the injuries here have cost him. Now, if he has longevity, if he stays at this level for 3 to 4 more years, I think he probably gets in. But right now, I kind of did this as like you're ending their career at this point in time. I don't know if he'd be a Hall of Famer right now.
Don't tell Katie Mox.
And his teammate, Christian.
She'll lose her shit. She'll scream at you about that. She's the biggest Niners fan I think I've ever met.
Well, Christian McCaffrey fits the bill for me as well. Only 3,000-yard seasons in his career. He's 87th all-time in rushing yards. He does have the high-end accolades, though. He's 3-time first-team All-Pro, 1-time second-team All-Pro. But at 29 years old, given the injury history he has, I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Laramie Tunsil, 5-time Pro Bowler. He could have a nice second act of his career, but he's a guy who feels like a very much Hall of Very Good. Joe Thuney, I put in here. He is a 4-time Super Bowl champion, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, only a 3-time Pro Bowler. Awesome player. Is that enough? Is that a Hall of Fame resume in your eyes?
I can tell you this because Joe Thuney showed me that he's a little bit different than others. His technique lends itself to longevity. His background in wrestling, his knowledge and understanding of what works for him is like unshakable. And a guy like Thuney, I could see having a third act. He had the second act in Kansas City. This is the third act now in Chicago. And while he may not add another Super Bowl, I mean, four Super Bowls, pretty damn good. He may very well add another All-Pro to that list. I think Joe Thuney is a guy that I would project to be a Hall of Famer.
Okay. All right. Next up, Nuke Hopkins. 26th receiving touchdowns, 21st in receiving yards, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team. Unfortunately, I mean, he played on some god-awful teams, right? He played with some god-awful quarterbacks. And by the time he started to get good quarterbacks, was more towards the end of his career. And once then started to get banged up, and now he's pretty much a shell of his former self. But he feels like kind of like the Anquan Bolden tier. Like, I don't think Anquan Bolden's ever making the Hall of Fame. Anquan Bolden has better numbers than Nuke Hopkins, though. Was an awesome receiver in his own right.
Wow.
Just doesn't feel like at the end of the day, it's going to be enough to get him a gold jacket. And the last guy, Stephon Gilmore, former Defensive Player of the Year, a rarity at the cornerback position. He won one, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, but just doesn't feel like he's going to get the nod. Didn't feel like he had dominant years for long enough. And obviously a slow start to his career in Buffalo before going to New England, where that was his best years, but still, I don't see it happening. All right, those are your Hall of Very Goods. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we have our door handle locks. Those are guys who I think should be locks, but could end up not being it. Your deadbolt locks, your weird cases, and then your first ballots. Right after this. All right, I'm just going to read through this whole list. This is the door handle locks. And you tell me who you think may be the most susceptible to not making it, and who am I not giving enough credit for? They're more than a door handle lock. These guys are getting in the Hall of Fame. So the list is Tyreek Hill, Trent Williams, Levante David, Jalen Ramsey, Chris Jones, Mike Evans, and Tyron Smith, who technically not on a team right now, but still in the NFL.
So you're asking me who out of this list could have a fall from grace?
Who's most likely? We're sitting here in a decade from now, and we're like, this guy's not in yet?
You'd have to tell me how the DB market works, but maybe Jalen Ramsey. But also, if Tyreek Hill doesn't show up and be Tyreek Hill this year, we're looking at a guy who burned extremely bright for a few years. Did he burn bright enough in those years? In my opinion, he did. But then you take a look at his all-time receiving yards. You got him at 42nd all-time. And, 7th best single-season receiving yards. It's not like he was even a top 5 all-time season.
See, he is the
kind
of player.
And there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, that's if he doesn't make it, I think it'll be more because of that. I mean, they
There's a
didn't
lot
let
going
Terrell
on.
Owens in for a few years, right? So it's going to be more because of that than anything else. But he's the type of player that, at least in my opinion, I trend more towards for Hall of Fame. That guy was
He burned
at
bright.
the
He won
top of his game,
championships.
the best. He was the best. Like he was undoubtedly. He had a stretch where no one debated who the most impactful offensive weapon was in the NFL was Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
It just was. For a multi-year stretch there, he had the 7th best single season receiving yard figure all time, 5-time first team All-Pro, 1-time second team, 8-time Pro Bowler, and just a different caliber that changed the game in some ways on his own. So I think he's the type of guy that you're putting in. To me, the most susceptible, purely because he doesn't have the traditional accolades that you usually put a guy in the Hall of Fame for, and because he's at a logjam in his position. It's Levante David, the Bucs linebacker. He will be, after this
Plenty
season,
of linebackers waiting to hear.
yes,
You know?
he will be 4th all time in tackles after this season. Ray Lewis, London Fletcher, and
Derek Brooks.
Derek Brooks, the only ones better than him in that regard after this season.
wait.
He's like 13 behind 4th.
So I hate that London Fletcher's not a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry that we're even having to bring up my guy London Fletcher, but it's funny that when they're referencing tackles, when they're referencing stats, comparing the greats of the position, Fletcher's name is on that little parentheses, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. It's a shame. It's criminal. But as you put so eloquently, there is a logjam at the linebacker position.
And the reason why he has 1 Pro Bowl, 1 first-team All-Pro, and 2 second-team All-Pros is because he was in the exact same draft, in the exact same conference as Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly. The only other 2 Hall of Famers from that era of linebackers played in his conference from the exact same draft class. So every single year where Levante David was awesome, he doesn't even make the Pro Bowl because there's 2 other guys there in front of him. And then also we call these edge rushers off-ball linebackers for Pro Bowl purposes. So I'm not holding that against him whatsoever. If you don't take that context into play when looking at Levante David's career, that's on you. He was, over that span, I mean, he was undoubtedly the 3rd best linebacker in the NFL. Yeah, I'm not going to say he was better than Bobby or Luke in their primes. He wasn't. He was the 3rd best, though, for a large stretch of that. And he was awesome for the Bucs. He won a Super Bowl. He's still doing it at 35 years old. His longevity is unique at the position, too. Like, I think he's reached that point for the linebacker position where that's a feather in his cap that you would use in Hall of Fame voting. So the other 2 guys are lock Hall of Famers. I'm putting Levante David in, but if he wouldn't make it, it would not surprise me, unfortunately. I think the other interesting one, though, is Chris Jones, because he's not going to have a ton of stats at the DT position. Only 6 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros, 3 second-team All-Pros. They've basically been the past 6 years. But 3 Super Bowls, and every single one of those was like a Chris Jones. Like, there was none of those where Chris Jones didn't show up big in the playoffs, basically.
Yep.
I think he's got to be in, given what he's done over his career.
Well, when you think about all the things they do to stop Tyreek Hill offensively and schemes and people, same thing with Chris Jones at the line of scrimmage. But, the layman doesn't get to enjoy it like we do because, it's in a tight little spot. You don't get to see it. Chris Jones dominates. He's been dominant. He's won Super Bowls. He's been the best, or if not, the 2nd best player at his position. And now that 99's out of the league, 95 has had the opportunity to really showcase that he's the guy.
Yep. All right, let's get to the Deadbolt Locks. The guys who they're in. They could retire right now. They're in, but they may not be first ballot just because of how the committee operates and whatnot. But these guys are in. They're Lamar Jackson. You might think it's crazy, but a guy who's won 2 MVPs is getting in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
It's going to happen. He could retire right now. He'd be in the Hall of Fame. Von Miller, 16th all-time in sacks, Super Bowl champion, 2-time, 129.5 sacks for his career. He's in. Myles Garrett, defensive player of the year, 4-time first-team All-Pro. Another guy where it's like he burned bright enough. He could retire right now. He's in. TJ Watt, he's in. 108 sacks, 31st all-time, 4-time first-team All-Pro, defensive player of the year, 7-time Pro Bowler. He's in. And then finally, Lane Johnson, May not have the pure accolades, only 2 first-team All-Pros, 3 second-team All-Pros, 6 Pro Bowls, but he has 2 Super Bowls, and he was
the best,
the man in those 2 Super Bowl runs. And another team where if you have multiple Super Bowls and you're kind of on a team that's had a stretch set the way the Eagles have had, you get even a little bit more deference. I don't even think Lane Johnson needs it. He's been a top.
Doesn't even need any butter or salt. You just, that's that meat will do.
Yeah. Those ones we don't need to debate. Here's the one that's the fun one. I call these the weird cases.
These are weird.
But they all have some Hall of Fame arguments. We're going to start with Justin Tucker, who is the weirdest case right now.
And about 12 months ago, this wouldn't be in the weird cases category.
This might have been in the first ballot category. But obviously, multiple sexual assault allegations against him over the past 12 months. He's kind of become a pariah of sorts, looked on, and for good reason. But he is the most accurate kicker in NFL history. He has the record for the longest field goal in NFL history. He has been held up until this past season, until about a year ago. He was the best kicker of all time, full stop. I mean, still, like, his prime was still the best kicking of all time. It just was. Outdoor, in a fully outdoor division, mind you. The most difficult division to kick in the NFL. AFC North, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Hardest division in the NFL. He was in his entire career and still the most accurate kicker of all time. He is the GOAT. But for reasons we've already enunciated, could be on the outside looking in. We don't have to spend too long in it. Just a weird case that we had to mention.
The next one's weird in a good way.
Cordero Patterson is very weird in a good way. We allowed Devin Hester allowed. We gave Devin Hester the honor because he was the best punt returner of all time. I think that means something. That guy should be in the Hall of Fame. Well, Cordero Patterson is the best kick returner of all time. Full stop. Better than Devin Hester. Say what you want to. Argue with someone else. 29 yards per kick return. The most in the Super Bowl, the highest figure in the Super Bowl era for anyone with at least 100 kick returns. The most kick returns of all time by a wide margin. 9 kick return touchdowns compared to 6 is second place for kick returns. And he returned kicks in an era where the NFL actively tried to take the kick return away. 2011 was when they moved the kickoff from the 30 to the 35 to incentivize touchbacks. Cordell Patterson's first year is 2013. Then in 2016, they moved the touchback from the 20 to the 25. And then they just moved it to the 30 last year. Obviously, most of his damage was done in the mid-2010s. But they actively tried to make it harder for guys to return kicks, and Cordero Patterson was still the GOAT. In my eyes, that's Hall of Fame worthy.
Yeah, you got to put him in the Hall of Fame. I had the pleasure of being teammates with Cordero Patterson. What a fantastic dude. So much bigger than you think. He is a literal horse. And when he runs by you, you've heard Edelman discuss or describe what it's like being on the field with Gronk and how Gronk just comes like trotting by you like a Clydesdale. That's Cordero Patterson. I just remember all the different ways we tried to utilize him on offense. I think John Fox was the head coach at the time. So it would have been Adam Gase, I think, was the OC. But yeah, CP, man. There's a couple guys that you play against or with that you watch when it's their time to do something. It's CP. Everybody was off the metal benches and watching our guy return kicks.
All right, and then the last one here. Calais Campbell.
Go!
Hall of Fame voice at minimum. But he is now in his 18th season in the NFL. As the third most all-time for a defensive lineman. All time. And I don't think this guy's slowing down. I don't think he's leaving anytime soon. He might go, he might touch the record. 20 is the record. He might get to it. He's a 1-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler, 2010s All-Decade team, 110.5 sacks for a guy who played a lot of his career at defensive tackle. You know, that's a massive number. Now, obviously, per season, it's not a massive number, but still a massive number for a defensive tackle. I think there's a world where if he plays 3 more seasons, and obviously that's crazy. He's 38 years old. But if he plays to 40, he's getting in. I'm putting him in. What a career that would be.
There's certain outlier statistics, like the Cordero Patterson conversation, he is the best kick returner of all time. So he's got to go in because there's got to be a place in the Hall of Fame for the best version of something.
Yes.
This guy was the best at having longevity. And not only, it wasn't just like he was the 53rd man on the roster. No, Calais Campbell has been, the banner man for whatever defense he's on. He's the guy that rallies the troops before, they run out of tunnel, and the camera's right behind him pregame. And he's 40 years old. Okay. It's unbelievable. I just think his technique, his length, and his smarts lend itself to a long career because he can play with guys off of him. He plays a lot of his game at the line of scrimmage. He's not in here trying to dent the pocket. He is a block. He is just putting his hands up and saying, you can't throw here. You can't run here either because I can grab you. He's done it for so long.
I think if he retired right now, didn't play this season or fell off the season, it would be, I bet he wouldn't get in. But if he keeps up, because the other crazy thing is like he's a quality starter still.
Yep.
Not just like you said, not just a fun story. The guy's in there playing 600 plus snaps at a high level. If he does that for at least this season and one more, I think he's for sure in. If he does it for 3 more, lock. Your first ballot. Those are your weird cases. Your first ballot, and then we can get out of here. We didn't even have to debate these. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Travis Kelce, Bobby Wagner, and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is the one who might be the most controversial on the list. He's in. That guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer. You cannot convince me otherwise. He has the 5th most rushing yards in a single season all time and the 11th most rushing yards in a single season all time. That is the highest combination of the top 2 seasons ever. Only Barry Sanders has 2 top 15 rushing yard seasons.
Wow.
So that is the company that he's in. And he played on some horseshit Tennessee Titans teams. Carried
the
them.
team.
Truly. Somehow only 1 first-team All-Pro, but 3 second-team All-Pros. Was the 2-time rushing leader. And that's not even one of those years that he had one of the top 12 seasons all time. 3-time touchdown leader. Derrick Henry is a first-team Hall of Famer in an era where the running game was gone. Derrick Henry, Hall of Famer.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys in the league, and we're looking at them right now over the course of the last decade where it's like, what's coming. Can you stop it? And it was the same thing with Aaron Donald when he played. It was like, you're just not going to be able to block him once you get to 3rd down. I mean, sure, you could double team him in the run, and we can put 8 in the box against Derrick Henry. He's still going to get 4.5 at bare minimum. The guy is just special. It's been such a pleasure to watch him play, and we're so lucky that he has taken care of his body so well that he is still in exceptional shape, and there's no signs of slowing down for the Baltimore Ravens in that running attack.
That is the other thing. It's like, given how much of a sheer freak he is, given how insane he's been to this point in his career, who's to say at 31 years old now, he doesn't play to like 34, 35 and just, I don't want to say not miss a beat. Obviously, it's going to be difficult not to, but like 1,000-yard seasons for the next 3 to 4 seasons.
He's never been a guy that relies on flat-out speed. And I'm not saying he's slow, because when he does get out into the open field, he can pull away. But his game is vision. His game is strength, and his game is just
that offhand.
Like the running back of the prototypical running back.
Yeah, and for his career now, 4.9 yards per attempt. Jeez. I mean, he's
4.5 at least. There we go.
First ballot Hall of Famer. Are you someone else? There's your list. There are your tiers of Hall of Famers. Let us know what you think. Let me know who I got wrong. We'll be back on Monday. Enjoy the Hall of Fame game tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time. Keep pushing.
Peace.